Okay. Perfect. And we're streaming. All right. So in this video, I want to show you how you can connect multi-reference fields in Webflow, using automation tools like Zapier or Integromat. So let's start with Integromat and play around here. So first things first, I'm just going to unlink this here. I'm going to move back to, unlink this here. Okay, I'm going to move back to this. So, okay, you have my project set up. So essentially, I have a project, has a collection, and I have a few things here. So I'm actually going to select some of this testing stuff I've done, and let's delete it so you won't see that. Okay, so perfect. And then, so I have a blog post collection. In the blog posts, I have a multi-reference field. You can see it right here. It's called categories, and it's referencing this field right here. So how can I make it when people select things? Let's, in this case, a form. We fill out a form in Webflow. When they select this, how can I automatically pass these through in Integromat? Well, right here I have an input in Webflow. I'm just using Webflow. And you can see my values. I have the name, and then for the value, I'm actually using the item ID. And where did I get that? So in Webflow, we actually show you the item ID. So if I go to categories and I choose this category I'm using, you can see there's an item ID that's displayed right here. I put it in as a field too, but you can copy it right there. So that's what I'm doing. If you want the, and we'll get to this later, but if you want the ID of the category itself or the collection itself, so you can click this and see the ID of the whole collection, but in here you can see the ID for each item. So what I did is I copied those and I put them in here as the values. So so now people see this, but they're actually passing through this this ID value. Okay, so and this is a select field with Webflow, and you can actually allow multiple. Now what I did, I'm just going to republish my site here. What I did was I actually came in here and I used some custom code in a library to make it look like this, so people can choose multiple things, and it goes back and forth side to side. So so let's do a quick test. So I'm going to say test, and I'm going to say this is a test, and actually I'm going to say just number this. I'm going to say test number 1. Say this is a test, and I'm just going to choose multiple of these, and I'm going to be ready to submit here. Over here on this side, I'm going to run my scenario once. So I have an Integramat scenario, and I'm watching for this form, and then here I'm creating a new item in Webflow. So now we're listening for a new event here. So I'm going to hit submit. Come over here so you can see it. It catches it, and it errored out. Okay, so let's jump back over into Webflow and see what we could do. So if I grab this, I could actually remove these quotes around these values. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to just do 2 of them. I won't do all 3. And then I'm going to republish. So let's republish real quick. So now that we've republished, I'm going to refresh my form. I'm going to try it again. So I'm going to say test number 2. This is a test. And I'm going to select just one of these right now. And then I'm going to run once. I'm going to listen for new. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. I've selected only one. If I hit submit, come over here, you'll see it fires. Ooh, and success, we created an item. So this should be test number 2. Let's refresh this. Okay, perfect. Refreshed. Now I have 11 items. Test number 2. I have this set to archive. You can see it passed that category through. So wonderful. We're on the right track. I hit refresh here. That was just one item. We could already kind of do that. That's nothing in an ID, and you can see how I have this set up. I'm catching my form, and then over here I'm just going to pull up this module so you can kind of see how I have it set up. The post body's coming from the content of the form, the content section of the form, that text area. And then this is actually feeding through my IDs, the categories field. I'm mapping it, and then I'm mapping the name. So comes through. So let's run this once and let's listen for new. Now let's try. We tried multiple. Let's try multiple again. So I'm gonna say I don't think we tried multiple. Let's try multiple. So test number 3. This is a test, and then I'm gonna select multiple of these, and then I'm gonna submit. Come over here. We'll catch it, and then it errors out again. What's happening is, the data that gets passed through, you can see it. It's item ID, comma, item ID. It just won't work with this Webflow module. And one of the reasons is in this array, or in this piece here, the way Webflow works when we send this through, this actually, when you have multiple items, multiple IDs, this turns into, it's supposed to be an array. And that doesn't automatically happen here in Integromat. So the easiest way I have found to do this is to actually not use the Webflow create item. Now, if we just want to pass one item through, great, that works. No quotes wrapped around it. You can just pass one. But like the whole point of a multi-reference field is we want to pass multiple references, and we don't want to have to, I've seen people set this up. I know Tossle at MakerPad posted a video. I've posted a video on this, and essentially the way it's set up is you can post multiple through, pass multiple through, and add multiple items, but what's happening is that you have to, let's say you're passing 2 items through, every time there's got to be 2 items or it breaks. So we want to be dynamic. If people pass 4 through, great, we get 4. If people pass 2 through, great, we get 2. If they pass none through, awesome, we get none. So one easy way to do this is what I did is I just added the quotes back around this, okay, and then I published and refreshed. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlink. And I'm going to use, instead of a Webflow module, I'm going to use an HTTP module. And if you look in here, you can see I have this call. So if you go to developers.webflow.com and you go to create new item, one thing that you will see is that you get, on create new collection item, you get this address right here. So you would want to copy this. And then what you would want to do is in Integromat, you'd want to paste that in, which is what I did. So let's just do that right now. We'll paste it in. But this is not my collection ID, which is what we need. So over here, we would come over here and we would go to categories, actually blog post, because that's what we're making as a new blog post. And we would copy this collection ID and we would paste ours in. So that's my collection ID items. The method would need to be post. And then we need 2 headers. You can add a header here. It's just name and value. But one is authorization. And so it's what it's called. And then once you've created authorization, what you're going to want to do here is you're going to want to go to your settings of your project, go to integrations tab, and grab your API key. And you're going to pass that through as the value. Okay. And then you need a second field that is going to be accept-version, and then you want 1.0.0. Then it asks you to build a body type. You're going to choose raw, JSON application. And then what I did is I just copied back over here where in my developers, I just copied this between the single quotes. And this is where it's a little harder, and I have a video on my YouTube channel about using Postman so you can know what some of this is. But essentially, I pasted it here, and then for name, I put in the name for my field, and for my categories, I'm passing this data field through. So what's passing through is this field right here. That's being passed through, okay? So passing that through here. And then, if you had other things, you could, comma and... if you have other fields, your dash field, I don't know what it would be called. You might have to use Postman to find that. But essentially, it's whatever the name of the field is. It's smalls, and then it's, name dash, if there's a space, name, and then, colon, and then, you would paste the value through that you're mapping, through. So you kind of build it. This is a little more complex to understand, but this also helps you get this added in and make it work. So I can remove your field here. Don't need that. Okay, so I'm going to hit cancel because I don't want to change anything I had here. So this is what I originally had. Okay, and then now I can choose as many or as few of these as I want. So what's going to happen is I'm just going to refresh over here. And so I have a form page. I'm just going to say this is test. We'll call it number 3. Test number 3, and we'll say, this is test number 3. So boom, we're good to go. Now I can choose as many of these as I want. So I'm just going to choose a couple. And then over here, I'm ready to go. So I'm going to run this once. I'm going to listen for new. And then I'm just going to hit submit on this form. We catch it, and it makes a call. And then if I come over here, you see status code 200. And that means I was successful. So if I come back to the designer, and I close this out, and I refresh, I'm going to see my new item in here. So jump in here to blog posts, test number 3. It's there. It's in draft form, and you see 2 of those items. If I'd have selected none, there would be none here. If I would have selected 3, if I had 15, people could add as many of these as they want. So this lets me add multiple multi-ref items using Integromat, which is pretty neat and super powerful. But what happens if, let's say, you're using Integromat, but your data's coming from somewhere else. So what I found is that typically you want the value to always be, this in quotes, and if it's, you might need like a comma and a space after it, because it's kind of, preferred way we want it here, or at least a comma. So if you're pulling it from Airtable or Google Sheets, you might be doing a lookup or whatever. Another example I'll show us where I'm using a switch here. So I have a couple of switches. And so one thing I could do is I'm just going to unlink here so I don't have to redo my HTTP call. And I've got a new event. So what I want to do is I'm going to use a tool. And I'm going to use the set variable tool. That's what I'm going to do. And in fact, before I do this, I'm actually going to unlink here. And then I'm just going to run this module only and listen for new, just so I can get some new data here. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to refresh my form page. I'm going to call this test number 4. And then this is test 4. Then instead of using the multi-select, let's say, I had check boxes or this was coming from somewhere else. So I'm going to hit these 2 and hit submit. Just submit this. So I caught those values. You can see rep is true, nam is false. Oh, and that's because I used this last one. That's fine. So let's actually do this one more time. Let's run this module only. Let's listen for new. I'm going to call this test number 5. And then this is test 5. Okay. And then I'm going to choose these right here and submit. Okay, I caught that. You can see on my data, rep is false, neck is true, nam is true. But I can just kind of play with these here. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to set a variable. Okay. I'm going to set these up here out of the way as I'm not using them. Okay, so here I'm just going to say, okay, I'm going to start with the first field. Any Q, this is all, lorem ipsum. So I'm going to say that's the name, 1 cycle. And then this is where I get to kind of start setting my values here. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a switch. So I'm going to do switch, open, and close. And then I need to get my field. So let's just say this one here matches. We're going to choose this and we're going to put a semicolon. And then we're going to say, if it's true, then we want our ID with a space. So I would come back over here. And I know this is a little complicated, but we'd come back over here. And I could come in for my categories. And I would go to this one here. You can see my item ID is available here. So I'm going to say, if it's true, this is what we're showing, right? But if it's false, another semicolon, return nothing. So just quotes, return something empty. So now I have a value that goes there. And then I can add in another one. So I'm just going to add in another set variable tool. And I'm going to do the same thing all over again. In fact, I'm going to come back over here and look at my data and see what was true. nam was true, and neck was true. So those are the two I want. So I'm going to call this one, nam, and then variable. So we're going to do the same sort of thing here. We're going to say switch, and then we're going to open and close. And then I need the field here, so it's this one. So we're looking at this, and we're going to say if it's true, semicolon. Okay, then we're going to put the ID for this here with a comma and a space afterwards. So I think it was this one right here. We're going to copy this item ID. We're going to paste it in here. So if it's true, give us that ID. But if it's false, give us nothing. Okay. And so now I have two variables. So if they check those boxes, we're passing this through. Essentially, is what's happening. Checking the boxes and passing them through. So so now that I have those two, I would need to combine them. So what I would want to do is I would want to go back to these tools, and I'm just going to compose a string. Now, one of the weird parts here is this is how you use a compose string tool. And I would say, this one and this one. And if you had multiple, you just keep adding them. And we're just going to compose them. So it's the value in between quotes, comma space, right? I'm going to hit OK. That composes them. But I can't name it. It's just called text, which is really infuriating. So now that I've got them, I have two items. And they're going to look something like... in fact, I'll just come over here where I have a form. So it would look something like this as they come through, just so you can see it. If I have a string, it's going to be XXXXXX, my item ID, and then a comma and a space, and then, a comma and a space. And if you're letting people select as many as they want, you don't know when the last one should, is what the last one's going to be, or how many there's going to be. And so that last item needs to not have that space and that comma. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use another tool, and we're going to set the variable one more time. So we're going to set another variable, and then on this one, I'm going to call this one ref because it's my reference items. And then here I'm going to do just a little different formula than I did before. So before, what we were doing is we were using switch, and on this one we're going to use a substring. So substring, and we're going to open and close. Okay, and then right here, what we're going to say substring, and then I'm going to grab this compose a string step. So we're going to grab that. That's my variable. And then what I want to do next is I want to do semicolon, and we're going to give it a starting point. So we're going to start at character 0, so at the very beginning. And then I need to tell it where to end. But once again, I don't know how many items they're going to select. I don't know which ones they're going to select. I don't know, what the length of this is going to be. So I can't say at character 120, knock off the comma because I don't know where it's at. So how I find this is I use another formula. I'm going to say, okay, let's make this length and open and close. And then what I want to do is I want to grab this same field here, text. Okay, and then it's open, close, and then what I want to do is I'm going to use an operator. So how do I do this? I click in here, and let's go to this Excel piece here. Let's minus it, and then let's say 2. So we're going to say get us the length of everything. So the length of this, and we're just going to take 2 characters off of it, and that's how we're going to find that. So now I can connect this right here, and if I come in here, I can swap this data field out for this ref, and it's going to pass these through. So now I'm just going to run this once, and I'm going to listen for new. Okay, so it's running. I'm going to come here, and I'm going to say test. I don't remember what number we were on, but I'm going to say test number 7. And I'm going to choose this, and I'm going to submit. And then everything's going to run. And you can see here where I set my variable for my reference items. Now it's the ID, comma, ID, no comma, and space at the end, which is what we wanted. And so if I were to refresh this, so refresh the designer. And I come in here. and I go to my blog posts, and I go test number 7. Okay, so, ooh, I passed through my name, but it looks like my categories didn't come through. That is a problem, so let's find out why. Oh, I did not save this, so let's go back here, and let's choose ref, and hit OK. And then let's open this up to make sure it's there. Okay, it's there. And you'll notice when I copied these through before, categories, it's got to go inside these brackets. So, and you can get all this formatting from the Webflow developer site. So I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to run this one time, and I'm going to listen for new. And then let's do this one more time to make sure this works. So I'm going to do test number 8. Okay, this is test 8. And then I'm going to choose these two again, and I'm going to submit it. And then over here, we're going to see it runs everything through. It's making the call. Perfect. Let's see if it was successful. Status code 200. That's what we want. Come over here and refresh. Okay. So now if I come in here into blog post, test number 8, and you can see, yep, it pulled those two over. And I could have selected as many or, once again, as few as I want, and it would have worked. So essentially what we're doing is we're switching these values using the set variable tool. You could also do a lookup in a Google Sheet. You could say, okay, well, if they're submitting values here in Webflow or even in a type form, and it looks up, values in a Google Sheet or whatever, and then you can return all the values that need to be set. So if they're true, false, whatever, we'll pull all the values that we need. And then, or maybe we even have the right values in a type form, but we just need to make sure we're matching them in a Google Sheet to return the right formatting. And then that last, we're going to compose them all in a string with a tool, and then we'll just use this fun little equation here to remove the last 1 or 2 characters, however you set it up. And then what that gets you is your value. So the ID, in quotes with a comma and a space, and then the next one. So everything is returning like it should, and we're using HTTPs to make the call instead of a Webflow module. So that's how this works in Integromat. Now, let's talk about Zapier. So Zapier.com. So let's go to Zapier, and let's do this in Zapier. Okay, so I'm going to create a new Zap. And I'm going to use Webflow, and I'm going to choose an event trigger and say form submission and hit continue. So let's add a new account. Let's go to bins. Have to do copy of, gotta find it. Copy of blog width. That's the one I want. Okay. So this is my piece here, and let's use this project, and let's use this email form, and let's hit continue. Okay, test to continue. There has been a recent submission, so we should be good. That found data, and actually this is not going to probably work for us. So as we play with it, so actually we can run this again. In fact, let's do submission A. Let's choose another, load more. And so I'm just going to come back over here and fill this out one time so we have it like we want it. I'm going to say test zap number 1. This is test number 1. And then I'm going to go back to using this. I'm going to pull all 3 of these over, and I'm going to submit. Perfect. So let's done editing here. Let's come back up here, find data. Let's load more. Oh, and here's this one. Perfect. You can see item ID, item ID, item ID. Wow. And it pulls it in just the way you want. Okay. So you're doing it this way. Really, the only trick is creating. So we would do the same thing here that we did in Integromat. So what we would do is, instead of using Webflow here, we would delete this, and we would use, webhooks by Zapier. And then what we'd want to do is we would choose our action, we would say post, and we would continue. So the URL we're going to use is actually the same one we used over here. So let's use this same URL here, and we'll grab that. And then, in fact, I kind of chose the one wrong here. We'd actually use custom request, okay, and then we would use post. And then the URL is what we had over here, so we're using the same URL that we got from the developer site when we were using Integromat. Same collection ID /items. No data pass through, but here's where we need to, pass through our data again. So I'm actually going to come back over here and just delete these pieces right here. I'm going to copy this and put it in here. Perfect. So the name is actually going to be right here, name number 1, and then this would be show all options here. It would be the data field. So pulling that through, and then what we would need is some headers again. So we do authorization, and we would grab our bearer token from over here. Okay. And then so authorization, then what we'd want to do is we'd want to say accept version. It would be 1.0.0, actually, oops, 1.0.0. And then we would say application type. And it would be JSON, I think application, just like that. Okay, so now we're making this call. Perfect. And then we're hit continue. And then let's test to continue and see what we get. Validation fields is required. So let's come back here. We do have fields. And it's interesting that it's giving us this error. Let me grab this and just do some poking around here. So I got this error before. The last time I did this, just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. We do have the name. We have archived false. We have draft true. So we do want it to be a draft item. And then let's see here. We have our categories that we're passing through, and that should be correct. So post with our items. We do have fields here. That's correct. This is all right. We mark them true, so that's right. Interesting. So this is something that I have had a little bit of an issue with Zapier, as even though this is correct, it will return an error, which can be odd. Fields is required. This usually happens when your Zap is missing a required field. So let's just come over here and make sure I don't have any fields that are required in my blog post. So name and slug are the only thing that's required, and we shouldn't have to worry about the slug because this is a new item. So let's dig in and see if we can figure out why it's doing this. Post URL data pass through. No. Okay, let's see. Post URL, that's correct. Pass through. No. Try this. Unflatten. Yes, that's fine. Authorization. Oh, you know what? Can see my problem here. I didn't add bearer right here. Okay, let's see if this works. Continue. And then let's test to continue. Let's customize this and see if we can figure out what is up. So fields, name, archived, false, draft, true, categories. And that should be right. No comma. Authorization. Okay, so let's just do let's put this to patch and continue. Test continue. It's not going to work because it's not root not found. Let's change this back to post. Continue. Interesting. Bad request. We made a request to. Okay, let's see what's happening here. So, let's do a webhook dot site. And then let's copy link address. Let's just, this is a good way to kind of see what's happening with your so I'm going to X this and let's paste that. Let's continue. Let's test and continue. Okay, so that worked. So you can see fields, everything is where it's supposed to be. And this is actually the correct format. There's no comma on the back end. Content type. Interesting. So we say content type. Did I get that wrong? Let's customize this. Oh, content type. It's completely my fault. So let's try this. It's good to know. Let me see it. Continue. Test to continue. And it still does not work, even though that is right. Content type, application JSON. So, yeah, okay, so this is still my error, it looks like. Application JSON. I always forget about this field for some reason when I do it in Zapier. Okay, so it worked. So let's come back over here. Perfect. We got it working the way we want. And then you can see over here, blog post. It pulled all three of those in. This is test zap number 1. It pulled every one of those in. That's really, 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 really cool. I love it. So what we did, if we did a custom request of post, we used the same URL that we used back over here in Integromat, and then we used the same data. We just pulled these through instead. And then authorization, you have to put bearer in front, and then I messed up the content type. So it's application JSON. So we pulled that through. But once again, what happens if this is coming from some other place and we don't have the values in a form in Webflow like this where it automatically formats it the way we want? So what do we do then? This is a great way to do this here in Zapier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this out one more time. I'm going to say this is test zap number 2. This is the second zap. Okay, and then I'm going to use these checkboxes again like I used over here. So I'm going to submit these, and then I'm actually going to come up here, find data, and let's load more. We'll use this one that we just pulled in, so we see true, true, true. And we're going to say we are done editing with this. And actually, back to setup. So we're going to add a step in here. So what we want to do is we are going to have to do just like the other one. We're going to switch. We're going to use the formatter from Zapier. Now, once again, you can also look this up in a Google Sheet here and go get your values. But if you're working in Zapier, what we can say is we want to work with text. We're going to continue, and then we're going to replace. So if our input is, we're going to show all our options. So if this one right here, the NEQUE is true, okay, we want to replace it with its item ID. So over here, we'll come back to Webflow and come to categories. And this one right here, we're going to say this is the item ID. So same thing, we want to replace it with, open quote, the ID, close quote, comma space. So perfect. So that's what we're going to replace it with. So anytime we see if this is true, we're going to find the word true. So if it's true, we want to replace it with this. So, and it is true, so we'd hit continue. And you can see it puts out, in quotes, the value. And then we would do this for all the others. So I'm actually going to quickly add these in. So let's go formatter again. And in the formatter, we'll just pull this up. Okay, perfect. And then we're going to do the same thing, work with text. And then we're going to replace. So replace. Perfect. And then we're going to choose a different one. So let's choose this NAM one, and we're going to say find true. If it was checked and it's true, let's replace it with the ID. So its ID is over here. And the same thing, we want to put it in quotes. So just like that, and a comma and a space, and continue. Perfect. Test and continue. And in this case, it was true, so it outputs it, which is great. So we're going to hit done. And then we had 3 of these to check, so let's do one more. And we'll say formatter, and we'll say text. Okay, and we will transform. We're going to use replace, just string.replace. And here we'll use our last form option that was checked, which was rep. And we're going to look for true. We're going to find it. And if it's true, we're going to replace it. Let's go grab it over here. The item ID, we're going to replace it with that. So comma space should do the same thing for us. Test review, boom. Test to continue. So now we have them all separate. We need to combine them. So how do we do that in Zapier? Well, how we do it is we want to use the formatter again, but this time we're going to do something special. So I'm going to say formatter, and then we're going to we'll use text. We'll continue, and then for choose value, we're actually going to do something custom here. So I'm going to do util.lineItem to string. So that's what we want. Actually, we're going to go custom where to let us type it in. Line item to string. Okay, so we're just going to take these things. So our values, we're just going to pull in all of these. This. And remember, if it wasn't checked, it would just leave it empty, so it wouldn't show up here. So we're going to combine all of these, and we're going to hit continue. Test to continue. And then what it puts out is each one of these in quotes with the comma and the space after. Now you could do that here too. You can say, so if we're going to combine these, we can actually put in a comma here if you want to do it on that step as well. So then Same problem that we ran into earlier is that, okay, well now we have this problem where the last one has a comma and a space after it. We need to get rid of it. How do we do that in Zapier? Well, we use code by Zapier. We're going to run a little JavaScript. Hit continue. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, if we had an item called ref, and it's going to be our last step, which is right here. Okay, and then we need to put in some code. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. I'll try to put this in the show or in the video description so you can have it. But essentially what we're doing is we're going to create a string, or create a variable. It's this. And then we're going to create a new variable, which is what we already created, this string, but we're just going to, do the same sort of thing we did in Integromat, but here we're doing it with JavaScript. We're just removing the last two characters, and then we're going to continue. So it should get rid of the last, comma and space. Let's test to continue. And then if we look at this, you'll see, yep, item ID, comma space, item ID, comma space. Item ID, no comma, no space. So now we're done. And then here on our custom request, what we could do, if we're doing it this way, we would just get rid of this piece. And we would use this piece now. So we can say done editing. We can send the data. Let's retest and continue. Oh, I've created all the items I'm allowed under my current plan. Okay, so let's come to the blog posts and let's select all of these and delete them. Okay, and then let's republish just for good measure. Okay, and then let's retest to continue. Okay, so now it created it. If I refresh here, I can come over here and we can see now my blog posts. There's my test zap number 2, and it pulled all 3 of these through. So, all you need is to be able to kind of some sort of mechanism to switch whatever value you're seeing or whatever, if it's a name, if you've just got the text of it, like, just the name of the category, you want to have these in a spreadsheet or, or use the switch mechanism. So essentially, if this is the name, that's great. We actually want to output this value wrapped in quotes, comma, space. And then we're going to use this JavaScript in Zapier to chop off the last 2 characters so we don't have those. And then instead of using the Webflow create item, we're just using request. And then this is where it's hard. You got to write these for every one of these. You need a comma, and some of them need to be wrapped in quotes. Booleans don't, certain things don't. So it's definitely different and a little more complicated. Maybe I can do a video on some of this sometime soon, but I hope this helps. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and let me know. But this is how you do multi-reference in both Integromat and in Zapier.